Now, in order to render this in color, I need to prepare values. I've got to represent the chair, the light side of the chair, and the middle value side of the chair, and the shadow side of the chair. So I have to mix up something with color in order to get that. Now, I've given myself the best chance I can by using orange, which is a lighter version of this crimson red, and dark umber, which is a darker version of the red. So I'm making a red chair. I'm going to make 3 separate values here, one for the light, one for the halftone, and one for the shadow. So I already know that my halftone is going to be the crimson because that's the color of the chair. Now, that's one value, but as we saw, we've used 2 markers in the middle value. We had 2 markers on the go. So I'm going to put my very darkest marker on this piece of plastic, and I'm going to take my crimson marker and just work it in there, and I will get a darker color of red. It's like working from a palette when you're painting. Now, so I can go from a little darker to lighter. Now, for the orange one, I don't want it to be orange because it isn't really orange, it's a red chair, but it's going to have some red. So I'm going to have to pick up some red off of the plastic and get a darker version of the orange. Because sometimes it's not enough that you overlay the marker several times. It's not enough. So you sometimes have to mix up a color that doesn't exist or that you don't have. You could probably buy a color. Now, I'm looking at this color and it no longer seems the right temperature. So I've warmed it up. So it means I have to put a little orange on that middle value side as well. And it's my brightest side. It really tells me what color this chair is actually going to be. So that's that value. So I'm pretty happy with that contrast. Now my shadow side, I'm going to have to maybe put all 3. So I'll put down, because I want to have enough warmth, because shadows are warm. They don't look quite right if they're too cold. And sometimes though, during the day, they are cold because they're reflecting the sky. So the blue of the sky, the blue and the purple of the sky. And then I'll put on my darkest value. I might have to put a second coat of the red. I'm seeing now that I'm getting this contrast. Okay, so I'm going to start where I know it's the darkest, same way as I started before. It's darkest up here, and I've got my cross hatching, so I don't have to worry too much about my strokes. Now I know it's getting lighter down at the bottom, so I might, and I wouldn't leave the white of the page in the shadow because the shadow is holding this together. Another thing to notice about the markers is that the longer you leave them on the page, I've got a damaged nib here, so I got to be a little careful. You might be very careful when you're putting your caps on, but the longer you leave the marker on the page, the darker it will become as well. We also looked at going over and over. That makes it darker too, but for sure it gets darker the more times you go over. Some brands of markers, it doesn't do that, but with this brand, the Prismacolor, which is the one I prefer, I'm going to leave a little bit of that red showing there so that I have a little bit of that, and I'm going to leave a little showing there, and I'm not going to go all the way across. I'm maybe just going to go like that. That looks pretty dark, but it's not going to stay this dark. So I may have to go back and fiddle with that some more, but you try not to. You try to be just very quick with it and not worry too much. So now I'm going to go. This is closer to the light up here, so I don't have to go quite so dark as that side. That side was what was holding it together, is going to be what holds it together. So I want to go a little lighter so that when I do the next part, it will show up in contrast, because it'll be dark to light from left to right. So remember, as long as you have a gradual value, it will read. It will read as light and shade. My next area of shadow is over here, so I'm start up where I know it's the darkest. And as I come down, I'm not putting as much pressure on the marker. And this shadow, oops, there's a little shadow there and there. My nibs are a little wonky. Be very careful putting your nibs, taking the lids off and on, because they do get damaged quite easily. Now I'm blending with the orange because I don't want it to be as dark as that. And now see, I've picked up a little bit of the red on my orange, so I was able to get that little value contrast I wanted there. And here, if I want, I can put this on here. Remember, I had done that as one of my values, and I didn't use it here because I wanted that to be the darkest. So now I can pick this up with the red and just go a little bit darker in there. Maybe I'll get some, and I can leave my stroke showing, that's fine. Then you have to clean your marker after you mix like that, or put something underneath. Remember, they bleed, so you have to clean your marker just by scrubbing it against a piece of paper. Now I want my middle value on the front, so I'm going to put the orange down first, and I have a feeling it's going to look more attractive if I go from left to right like this and let it look a little lighter in the middle. I might cover that corner because it is a dark color that I'm doing. So now it's just a little bit lighter in the middle. Now I'm going to go across this way, and it seems like I'm chopping. I'm not chopping. I'm just going carefully there. And there's a shadow in the center, but I think I'm going to mix it. Watch this baggie though, because it can this stuff can get off on your hand, the heel of your hand, and then it becomes a big stain in your rendering. So you've got to watch that. Be careful. That gives me a little bit of that, and then I don't mind having a little bit there too, because I have some contrast. Okay. And then this was a shadow I didn't put in. I have to keep remembering to put down my orange first. That's become part of the temperature of this. So if I miss it, then the whole temperature of what I'm putting on will be lost. Okay. Now the top part, I can start with my orange, but it's not orange. I've got another front part. So I'm going to wet that with the orange. I'm going to go up from the bottom. Oh, and I like that little key line there. I'm going to try to keep that there. And I'm going to go, this is another middle value. So I wet it with the orange first, and then go down from the bottom with the red there. And now the top, and remember, for the top I use the orange and I picked the red up off the plastic. So I'm going to put out some fresh red. You never know how much you're going to need, so put that out, and I'm going to wet it with my orange. I'm going to try to leave some white here. Remember, the top plane, you really try, because you're going to, it will keep it from looking cut out and stuck down. My chair won't look like it's been cut out and stuck down because there's more white of the paper around it. So it's like works like a common color. And I'm going to just come across here. And I ask myself, do I need this red? I think I need a little bit here. Just where it starts, I can put a little. My orange is a little dry, so it doesn't pick up off the plastic as well as it might. Okay, now this is a front value, so I have to put some red in there. I'm trying to keep my head out of the way here. but there is a certain excitement in putting the colors up that's missing from the grays, I have to admit. But the grays are, if you can get it to work in the gray, it will work in the color. It won't work, it doesn't work that way then. And it led to having the right colors. Don't forget, when you do that, you have to clean your marker. Otherwise, now when I try to go on the top here, it's going to be too dark if I don't do that. And I'm glad I've got some of the white of the paper there, and I can leave some more. Okay, now I want to put a cushion up, but I want to make sure that this cushion has some of my colors that I'm going to be using on the floor. I'm going to be using some browns, the sand and the light tan. So I might actually put a little bit of that color in here. I've got the light tan now, and I want to put some stripes in. A little bit of contrast there, and it's okay if I get some on the chair itself. It just gives it a little bit of harmony, your color a little harmony. In the shadow part of the cushion, this is going to be darker, so I'm using some burnt umber or burnt sienna. There's some burnt sienna, so that puts that color in shadow. Then I need a little bit of shadow on the green. So see, you have to sort out what your colors are going to look like before you can put shadow values in for them. In this case, I don't know how I have it. I hardly ever use green, but I have green here. For some reason, I had enough colors of green to add the shadow colors in. And then I want to introduce some of my red. Or should I introduce orange? We'll try the orange first, because that's not going to give it much go. So I'll put a little red in. The red's maybe a little dark for that, but I've got my little cushion, and my legs are going to be brown, dark brown. So I've got two colors of brown. I've got this sienna, and you see the outline is making this so easy for me, because I don't even have to stay within the lines. The lines are so strong, so I can't. This has got to be one of the hardest things to get across, is what a lifesaver putting these outlines on is. And I could have even gone stronger with my outlines. These are pretty conservative outlines. Now I want to have I've got a wood grain floor, so I want to have quite a strong shadow here in my brown. And again, you know, I don't have to be so careful with it. I can be a little bit more. That's my dark here, my darkest dark. Not my darkest brown. I have a darker brown, but I think I'll put the dark brown on my baggie. And any piece of plastic will do. Some people use their set squares. I don't think that's a good idea. As I said before, it's pretty dirty work, and it makes your set square sticky, and yeah, so don't do that. But any sort of, this is just a sandwich baggie, so I can make it a little darker, and I can start to introduce some wood grain now. I'm just twirling my marker. I'm sticking to my bag. I have to be careful. And I should probably go a little bit darker with the wood grain inside the shadow. Because it will look more translucent, more transparent, if you can see the shadow. I'm going to start where my shadow is and pull out there, that way. I don't mind if the shadow gets a little darker. That's not a problem. And there are reflections always on a hardwood floor. Now this is my light tan, so I just want to go a little bit darker here where the chair is. So even with carpeting, you start a little bit darker right next to your important objects, and then you let it taper off as it goes away. This is my sand. Goes right through the shadow. What's very important to remember, and is another difficult thing to get across, is that the shadow cast by the object takes on the color of the surface it's sitting on. So it's not a red shadow for the red chair. It's a brown shadow for the brown wood. Now this is my darker one, and always on floor plans you have reason to make it just a little more contrasty next to your furniture, because they will have little shadows under them and the color is more aggressive there. So, and now my actual shadow, I can use my sienna brown, and I'll add a little bit of the other. And this isn't a bad way to start, actually, with your shadows, and then build up to your lights, because you'll end up leaving your lights a little lighter. Whatever way helps you to build up the sort of contrast that you want and the sort of finish that you want. You have to kind of have the finish in your mind's eye, and that'll get easier every time you do it. But it's still nice to be surprised. But you don't want shock. Just a little surprise is always good. Okay, so now I'm going to put a little bit of wood grain in here. Now this is a floor plan, and these are usually so tiny, but you can add some of these things and that will help as well. So the grain is darker inside the shadow than it is in the light, but I can take my sienna brown now and put a little bit more wood grain out here. I dropped my marker. That's all right, it doesn't matter, because I have that those big outlines on my chair. I could even make them stronger, but let me see what happens. Now I'm going to take my orange, just my orange, I'm going to check it on a piece of paper, and make sure when you do that, that you use the paper that you're working on, and not only that, but you put a piece of paper underneath it, because these markers bleed through. They're very wet. So now I'm going to leave that white key line and a little key line here if I can perfect my aim a little bit. And it's okay that I see my strokes. I'm on marker paper, so I can blend a little bit. And then I'm just going to grab a little bit of red and put a little bit of contrast. My orange is too dry, so as I say, if you have a big important job on, you want to make sure that you have extras of the markers that you're using, and they won't go to waste. They never go to waste. You'll use them all up, because they're probably colors that you like. So I'm gonna go a little darker in here and a little darker behind here. Oh, and there's shadow there. So now I can get my red out. I haven't done any red yet. That really wasn't shadow, but I thought it looked like it needed a little accent. And I'm going to put some more of my brown on the bag. And there. And I think I might go back with my orange, and since this is lit, it's all lit up, but I think it just needs a little bit more punch to set it up. So I'm going to do that. And now my cushion, I have the light tan stripes to start with. And then I have the light green. And the red. Now this red kind of stuck out quite a bit, so I have to be careful with that. But I wouldn't mind a little bit of just the raw red. So as I say, you do all of your thinking and planning, but then in the end, it's how it looks that matters. And if this stands off well enough off the page, and I think that it needs a little bit thicker outline, so that's what I would do. Just outline it a little bit thicker.